I'm just delighted that you've all joined us today for this, in a way, historic online webinar to experiment, certainly, to see if something really important is going to work for us, and that is the frontal awakened mind pattern. It's a journey that we're going to take together to see if it's possible to have a frontal awakened mind pattern. There have been some objections, as I wrote in the email, people saying that maybe it's not going to train the right networks, or maybe it's going to throw us into the category with a not necessarily real EEG system, as we certainly have ourselves, and various other objections. But I think the only way really to find out whether this is possible and whether it works is just simply to try it. So that's what we're here to do today. I have a couple of things that I want to show you to reassure you that I have done my homework here, and certainly have been trying it on myself for quite a long time. For example, I've had a dual EEG hookup system going around the world, where around the US anyway, where we tested the mind mirror classic positions in the back, and then the frontal hookup simultaneously. And so you can see that sometimes for some people there's a bit more beta, but when the mind is quiet, that's a very quiet beta. For this person, for Donna, it was less alpha, but she by nature has a ton more delta, and there typically is a lot more delta in this pattern. Alston Balcom did it. You've met Alston on previous webinars, I expect. He also had a quiet beta and not a lot of alpha, nor did my grandson Blake Davis. However, as you get on down these patterns, here's one for John. He has a bit more alpha. Again, you see this more extended theta if you're comparing the alpha with the theta than we see on the back of the head. Laura also had less alpha. However, my pattern is dead on the same. You can recognize easily the awakened mind pattern in my own pattern. So what I'm hoping is that your patterns are going to more resemble mine. And if so, then we'll have something we can actually test. There's a decent amount of alpha for that amount of beta, and you can see I've got the 2 bands of gamma up here at the top in this screenshot. And this is a 9 hertz alpha. I don't know why that is, but somehow the alpha that's rising up from, according to a neurophysiologist, the base of the brain is, by the time it gets to the forehead, since we're monitoring on the front now and not the back, is 9 hertz as its peak frequency instead of the 10.5 that you get in the back of the head. And you can see that there's more theta than you would expect, and there's also not a peak theta at 6 hertz. And there's a lot of delta. And then I have another thing that I'll share with you. And this one is something that I've been working on pretty good bit lately. And it's my own brainwave patterns. Let's see if we can get him to simply come up. Can you see that picture there? Okay, great. All right, and so this is what we're going to use for the template for the hookup, but just to scroll on down and show you. What I found is that I could take the frequency modulator that's under the Mind Mirror options, frequency adjustment, and adjust to what was my pattern, and then meditate with it and get Mind Mirror rewards. And I was getting, as you'll see a little bit later in this document, like 80%, 88%, 89% on training level 5, which is very comparable to our regular pattern. One person was concerned that that the pattern wouldn't respond in the front of the head as it does in the back of the head, so that if you have a profound state of consciousness, would it look the same? Well, it does. There's a diamond on a delta platform for me. There's a 9 hertz alpha peak, awakened mind. These are all my patterns. There's another one with a 10.5 hertz alpha peak, more of an awakened mind, but here with an upturned delta. Here's another one with even less beta, so you can see that the beta does reduce on the frontals. It's still got the 9 hertz alpha peak, but even with the frequency modulator, this is more theta. This is, if this were in the back of the head, we would be calling this more of a channeling pattern. And here is a more of a diamond, almost a complete diamond, which is, a much higher state of consciousness than the awakened mind. And here's another awakened mind. So over and over, I'm able to produce clearly an awakened mind pattern. That's a summary pattern there. And there's another awakened mind pattern, which is a summary pattern, albeit with the 9 hertz alpha peak and more theta than you would necessarily see in the awakened mind, but with an upturned delta, which reflects, more of an evolved mind state of consciousness. And then I did a second set of tests, same thing. This time I did it with the BVP meter and with the GSR. 80% rewards for that pattern that's been adjusted with the pattern modifier. You can see that there's a bit more beta in there than we would have in the awakened mind pattern. And there's more theta, but still the 9 hertz alpha peak. This one's going all the way up to 91 hertz, so that's why it looks so bell-shaped. But I was doing that to say, okay, well, if I can, in fact, what I did was I broke this session up. It didn't affect the GSR, but it did affect the heart rate when I encountered the fear that I was working with on Anna Wise's personal transformation meditation. And the thought here is that that's what we're going to do today as a personal transformation meditation, where you encounter something that you're going to work with, which will, by definition, give you some problem-solving beta and some alpha theta. And so sure enough, the blood volume pulse went up, and that's possibly why there's more expanded beta right there. It's because of the encountering the fear that I was working with during that meditation. And then this is a segment of it, and you can see it's basically the same pattern. Less amplitude in the beta when there were self-healing sensations of light. And sure enough, dynamically the pattern changed to the evolved mind that you would expect to see with sensations of light. And here it's working with the issue, more of an awakened mind, more of an evolved mind bottom here, and actually more alpha there as well, especially because that is at 9 hertz attenuation for the sensations of light. I had to increase the attenuation to get the alpha in, and whereas that one's set for 7. So significantly more alpha when I was doing the sensations with light. Broke this up into sections here, 4 sections and subsets of those sections. First 3 minutes, awakened mind, 86%. And now this is with the adjustment that I made with the frequency modulator, but still, high scores, very comparable to what you would get, and they are dynamic. Self-healing with light had an increase in the awakened mind pattern, as you would expect, an increase in the evolved mind pattern, as you would expect. The gamma synchrony went down a little bit. You never know what gamma synchrony is going to do anyway. And then here, same thing. You see dynamic pattern changes, and this is all the frontal. Some evolved mind at the bottom here, more evolved mind at the bottom here, and then more profundity with these diamond-shaped patterns and evolved mind bottoms during the personal transformation. So I really have some hope. The biggest question is, if you put the electrodes on the frontals, will the pattern be dynamic? And clearly it is dynamic. It changes to higher states, and it changes to higher states according to what you would expect it to do in the back of the head. And indeed, what neurofeedback says is that brainwaves resonate through the head, throughout the head. There is every expectation and likelihood that an on the forehead pattern that we find for the awakened mind is going to be very similar, as you've just seen, to what we find in the back of the head. It's not the same. The alpha does attenuate, it does drop to a lower frequency. And oddly enough, even if your eyes are open, you have more alpha on the frontals than you have with your eyes closed, which is exactly the opposite of what you have in the back of the head. Nevertheless, it's similar enough that I think we could train the awakened mind if we find a similar enough pattern, and maybe even the other patterns as well, although we have to start here and take the baby step first. So is everybody ready to start the exercise and see how we go with it? So the first thing I do, having this long hair, but also there's another reason to do it, is just take the headband and put it over your head so that it's around your neck, and then just grab the bottom of your hair that's on the forelock, and then just push it out of the way, and then that gives you a nice clean forehead to work with. And then at the end we'll just pull this headband down over the electrodes. And so then I just take my 1020 and take a nice size glob. I have a slender forehead and a kind of a narrow head, so I'm going to go all the way up to the hair to clean, all the way down to the front.
Was that the 1020 or the new prep?
The new prep. And then get it nice and scrubbed and clean, and then just take a tissue or a paper towel or something and make sure it's cleaned up. Now for the next part, I'm taking off my glasses. You can run the wires off the back of your head, but if you do that, there's some possibility that they might pull, so I just run them down the front of my head, and then I can see if they're pulling and know that there's nothing pulling on the wires. So as always, the first thing is to separate your, well, this time, I beg your pardon, we are not going to separate. So you can just hang your electrodes over either shoulder, and then place the sensor box in the back and your shirt collar or something. And then we're going to start with the ground wire. So these wires are going to be placed like so, but it's not going to be the same positioning as usual. So we'll just, for the sake of simplicity, start with the ground wire. And all I do is take the backing off of it and just place it right smack in the middle of the forehead, right above the nose, or as close there to as you can get, with or without a mirror. That's good, great. And then for the next one, take the black wire that's got the blue stripe, or if you have an older electrode set, then with the white stripe. In any case, it's the black wire with the stripe. And then place that one to the left of the center one. And then next, take the red wire, red on black, no stripes, and then that one goes to the left. We'd all end up looking like Medusas of one kind or another. One time, the first time I did this, Steve Clark almost fell out of his chair laughing at me, like he could look any better. All right, great. And then take for the next one, the black wire, plain black. And then that one goes to the right of the center white wire. And then this should leave you with only one electrode, and that's going to be the red one with the blue or the white stripe. Well, I've got mine right on the bone, so I'm going to take it a little bit off the bone and put it a little bit right so it doesn't rock, so the electrode doesn't like rock. It does look funny, doesn't it? But just think of the outcome if it works. And then now you can just go ahead and take that headband and pull it right on down and plug in. And we'll all run a test to make sure we get good readings. But let me show you first, before you start yours, what I did with mine. Let's see. I put a Vilistus screen on that's got the mind mirror here on the left, and I took spectrograms for channel 5 and channel 6. So if you don't have that up, you might want to just pull that up now. And how you do that is you go to Instruments and Spectrogram and tell it, get one for channel 2, and then do it again and get one for channel 6. Instruments and Spectrogram. So I'm going to go ahead and start mine recording. And now you see this yellow line here. That's what you don't want. I don't think I can really help that yellow line right now because I'm inside of a computer bank and I've got so much electricity going here. But if yours will be like a purple line or a blue line or no line up there at 60 hertz, that would be ideal. Actually, I take that back. That is higher than 60 hertz. So at 60 hertz for the US, I'm actually at a purple. So that's acceptable. And in fact, there's no artifact just hanging there inside the pattern.
What do you think that high yellow line is, Judith?
That one is just higher than, and it's just saying you shouldn't have this much amplitude there. But of course, we do have that much amplitude because, well, if you don't have legacy EEG support ticked in Mind Mirror options, or in a newer version, high frequency artifact removal. So how you get that is you left click on the Mind Mirror display, or you can just go configurations, options, Mind Mirror, and just let's first make sure that your version of that, whether it says legacy EEG support or high frequency artifact removal, let's make sure that that's ticked. And once that's ticked, well, that's going to take all the noise out of the pattern. And I'm using a USB connectivity plus USB emissions filter. So really and truly, there's no reason I should have artifact except that I'm sitting in this computer bank and there are sound waves and all kind of stuff. Should just turn this puppy off. I bet I wouldn't have as much. Let me just turn my other computer off, and I bet that quiets it down. Even a fan whirring, you know, or an air conditioner humming, anything like that can cause a sound wave. It also helps if you're running a laptop, as I am, if you can unplug that laptop. And you can see that some of that high frequency stuff in my pattern has just disappeared because I just now unplugged the laptop. So I think the yellow line is there in the spectrograms, partly because I've got so much noise going on here around me, but also just because the spectrogram doesn't expect to see any activity up there. It's only geared for 60 hertz is the highest you're supposed to see on the spectrogram. So it's wondering why there's anything higher. But I think my noise is pretty much quieted down. All right, so everybody, if your session is started and running right now, go back to Vilistus and tap your enter key. So you want to left click on the mind mirror, so that's selected, and then tap your enter key like 3 times, 1, 2, 3. That's just to put a marker in to say we're starting right now.
Okay.
And then that says that you're about to, if you will, please, close your eyes.
Okay.
Find a comfortable position to begin with. And this is Anna Wise's personal transformation meditation. I hope you've all had an opportunity to think of an issue that you would like to work with, and this will be something that you'd like to change inside yourself. Something that could be a block that's unidentified. Maybe you feel that there's something that needs attention, but you don't know what that is. Or maybe you are angry with someone and you want to change that. Or maybe you have some kind of guilt about something and want to heal or transform that. This is the perfect meditation to do that in, as it allows you to move into that alpha theta meditation state and add back a little bit of beta for problem solving. And so we begin. First, become aware of the issue, problem, or block that needs transformation. Consider what it is that you would like to work on inside yourself. Then put that idea in the back of your mind and leave it there, allowing your mind to clear. Let go of any preconceptions or expectations of any particular solution or outcome. Allow your mind to still and relax your body. Remember what it feels like to be in your state of meditation, and allow yourself to return there. Focus on your breathing and gently let yourself breathe easily and deeply. Remember to relax your tongue. If you feel any pulling on the back of your tongue, it means that you are talking to yourself. If you relax your tongue completely, you can't talk to yourself, and it will be much more difficult to think. Anytime an unwanted thought comes through, relax your tongue as you exhale and breathe the thought away. Breathe relaxation into your mind on your inhale. And breathe away any thoughts when you exhale. Relax your body. Gently make sure that the whole of your body is relaxed. Gently scan your body to make sure you are not holding tension anywhere. Shine a light through your body. Notice any areas that are darker than others. Breathe relaxation into those parts of you when you inhale, and breathe away the darkness when you exhale. Continue relaxing your body until you can see the light throughout. Now begin to imagine or create a safe and healing environment. In your mind, create an environment that is healing for you. It can be indoors or outdoors. Walk around this environment. Notice the colors, the shapes, the forms. Be aware of the textures, the atmosphere, the temperature, the sounds, the smells, even the tastes. Explore this environment using all of your senses. Make any changes that you want to make, adding anything that you might need for your health and well-being. Create a space that is secure, serene, and safe. And now find a comfortable place within this environment to sit down and allow yourself to go into a very deep meditation. Deeper and deeper inside yourself. Letting go. Just letting go. Inside. From this place of depth inside yourself, begin to get in touch with the part of yourself that needs transformation, healing, or change. It may be the issue that you originally thought about before the meditation began. Or you may find that a deeper or more meaningful issue comes forward, ready to be transformed or healed. Find some way to allow this part to manifest for you. It could be through a symbol, an image, a concept, or a body sensation, a sound, or even a voice in your head. Or it could simply be a sense of knowing that the part is present. Now you are going to begin to dialogue with the part. Ask it if it's willing to communicate with you. If it is uncertain, ask what needs to happen to make it more willing. You may hear the answer in words, or experience the answer in images or a sense, a body sensation. Or it may just be a kind of knowing. Remember to trust what you are feeling and experiencing in your subconscious. What follows is a series of questions that you might want to ask this part of you. Each meditation is different, so only use these as a guide. You may add, delete, or adapt in any way that is helpful to you. Begin by asking this part that needs transformation how it is feeling right now. If it is feeling at all threatened by the experience, you might want to reassure it that what you are doing is for the benefit of your whole as a being. Your whole being. that you are doing this to heal and to help, not to hurt. How long has this part been here? Is this a new issue that you are looking at, or a very old one? This may lead you to ask, how did it get there? Ask this part, what does it need or want from you? Next, you might ask, what role or purpose does this part play in your life? What is its positive purpose for you? How does it serve you? If the purpose seems negative or obscure, ask again what the positive purpose is, so that you can discover how this issue or problem may be serving you. Is this part playing a role that you still need in your life? If so, how can this role be fulfilled in a way that is more beneficial to you? If you do not need this service anymore, how can you transform this part? If you no longer need this role performed for you, gently but decisively inform the part that the role is no longer needed in that way. What needs to happen if this part is to work in a way that is healing, healthy, and beneficial to you in the present? What needs to happen for the transformation you are seeking to occur? Is this part willing to let this change occur? If not, what needs to happen to allow it to become willing? Remind it that you are doing this for the benefit of the whole of you right now, and that your needs have been changed, possibly dramatically, since this part was set up to fulfill this particular role. Allow yourself to sensualize. Use as many of your senses as possible to imagine the change taking place. And now, give your appreciation. Acknowledge that part for all of the hard work it has done for you. Even if it has fulfilled a function that you disagree with now, offer your appreciation for the fact that inside yourself, this part thought that it was working for your benefit. Allow this part to respond to you. Ask it if there is anything else that it wants to say to you. Check to see if any other issues have been stimulated. Are there any other parts inside you that want to say something to you? This interchange may have stimulated other aspects of yourself that are happy, sad, frightened, disturbed, or pleased with the transformation. Give them an opportunity to communicate with you. If necessary, at a later time, begin your dialogue again with a new part or parts that seem disturbed. Follow this process through to conclusion. When you are ready to complete your meditation, spend a few moments inside preparing to close. Give your appreciation to your inner parts for their willingness to participate in your healing. You may wish to make an inner agreement to check back inside yourself at some future time to continue this process, or to allow yourself further opportunity to meditate on the issue. A closure is not necessarily an ending. And now begin to crystallize your experiences into a few key images, words, or phrases. Bring these out with you when you awaken from your meditation. Remember, you can always return and reinforce your transformation whenever you wish. Make sure that you stretch, breathe deeply, and arouse properly before you leave your meditation space. As you send your experience up to your thinking mind, you may wish to take a few deep breaths. Wiggle your fingers and toes. And gently return to the outside space. Now I see that we're all back, or just about back. So now is a good chance to go to your Vilistus screen and just press stop. And give it a title. Personal Transformation is the name of the meditation. Be sure to press Save Session. Okay, so we're all back. How are we all doing? Shall we, so everybody has a session saved, is that right? So I guess it's time we could take these off. Hopefully they're not in hair. Be sure to turn off our DSUs, save the battery. It's probably also a good idea to dispose of these electrodes so they don't stick on you or your belongings. If you guys want to report on that meditation, we'd be thrilled to hear it. Because of course that's going to matter. We want your inexperience to match your brainwave pattern. So go ahead and concretize your experience is a good idea for now. You know, later on people say, oh, nothing happened at all. But if you'd got them to report right then, they would remember that indeed something did happen. Who wants to start? Will anybody, are you willing to start? You don't have to report. It's just, you could just talk about, instead of the content, you could just talk about what the meditation was like for you.
Well, I can start.
Okay, great.
I love that meditation. I've listened to it many, many times, Anna Wise, and I find it very, very effective. I love going back, you know, to that part. Anyway, and I've had so many breakthrough realizations doing it. Now today I'm a little bit dull and a little bit sleepy, I think, because I felt myself slipping under a few times. So I didn't get quite the, you know, the impact that I normally do. I've just had a lot going on. So I suspect that mine's going to look kind of sleepy.
That's okay. Did you feel like you got a resolution to whatever it is you were working on?
No, it's a pretty big issue for me right now, pretty big fear one. And I, you know, I've made some progress with it already, but today I don't know that I did exactly. I think I was a little bit, I think I started kind of, you know, having images, falling asleep, sort of semi-dreaming.
Okay. Okay. Well, so I don't know. So maybe a better test of this frontal awakened mind pattern for you then will come when you're alone and working at your computer, just listening to the meditation, and, you know, can do it in the privacy of your home. We can look at it tonight for sure, because it would be interesting to see you slipping under. but probably for the testing itself, for the results themselves, we'd really hope that you would get some kind of, you know, presence inside the meditation, a deep sense of presence inside the meditation, and some resolutions.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. How about you, John? What happened for you? Anything?
Yeah, I had one or two issues, and my eldest son, we don't seem to talk much, so we went back to a time where it possibly started. So it's given me something to work with. To me, it's like the whole meditation is like personal ego states, which I've done in hypnotherapy. So it's a brilliant technique.
Okay, so Jan and Eugenie, you have to pronounce your names better than I'm doing it.
That sounds good.
We talked about that Eugenie being a Louisiana name before. It's probably not how you say it in Dutch. How do you say it?
Eugenie.
Oh, close.
Close.
Yes,
Pretty close.
pretty close.
Yeah. So which one of you were hooked up?
Yes, me was. I was.
Oh.
Well, I found my solution for my issue very quickly. So after that, I dived into something else, like what was coming up was that I was in the theater, and there was a whole other story, a problem I had to solve because I already solved it very fast. That's all I can say about it.
So you went to another one? Did you go to another issue? Or did you not have another?
There was no other issue
Okay.
at this moment.
Joy, what was your experience of this meditation? I saw that you did it even though you're not hooked up, right?
Yeah, I did. It was lovely. It was really lovely. I love that meditation, and it was a big reminder of how robotic your voice is. And it was also good to do. So I was working on is the deep sense of what was underlying it was very old, and it felt like a very old issue. And so it was good to be able to hold it for a reasonable length of time and allow that to evolve. And I found myself then going into states of, some aspect of it, of working with things being in a more resolved state. So moving from past into future. Yeah, it was good. It was really good.
That's great.
I'm sad that I'm not actually recording it currently, but do you have an audio of that, Judith?
I do. I have an audio of Anna doing it. I'll dredge up an email that's got a Dropbox link to that meditation, and it also has all of the. I think I put this in a Eureka Times one time, or maybe an email. I don't know, but I'll send it to all of you for sure.
Okay.
Even if you did it this time, it gives you easy access to
Yeah,
the diagram for the hookup and all.
once you get
So I hope you'll do it, Joy, because you have a
well,
beautiful pattern, and you'll be able to hold that pattern. So that's the key, really. Thanks for sharing that. Glad it worked. Yay.
yeah, no, it's lovely. It was really lovely to do that again.
All right.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So Esther, I don't see you, but I see that you have joined us from Arizona, yeah?
Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Oh, hurrah. This camera's not working on this laptop, but I joined in just in the last perhaps 10 minutes of the session because I hadn't realized the timing on this. So hello.
So next time, as I said, I'll send all the little bits and pieces out, so I hope you'll do it. You and Helen Hess as well. Okay, so great. So then shall we go ahead with how this thing might or might not work? So let me, unless anybody has anything else you want to add about the meditation or about the hookup or any just general observations?
One other point, it might be great for all of us to actually do a session when you send everything ourselves in our own, space that we prepare for this and send that to you so that you can make a comparison with those who actually did it during this, as well as what happens when we do it on our own.
Absolutely, absolutely. In that case, we consider this just a dry run. So let me share my screen with you and just pull up my session now. Of course, I was talking, and so there's going to be some artifact in mine, but nevertheless, it should have something worthwhile in it. Let me find it again. Here I am. All right, so a mind mirror summary is not going to be any good at all for the whole session because we were talking and getting ready for part of it. So instead, I'll just go to, say, a left brain summary. I like to go for alpha amplitude, but it's not going to be, because usually you'll see less alpha when people less alpha when people have their eyes open. And so there'll be a little bit of alpha down here, and then alpha increases, and you can say, okay, well, that's where they close their eyes. You can pinpoint that immediately. But not so on the frontals. You can see that it's a pretty steady amount of alpha. So that's why we put the marker in to say we started there. And actually, we didn't start there. We probably started somewhere right around here, just as a wild guess. So I'll put another marker in there, and then I'll put a marker at the end.
Judith, what's going on at this point right here? 7 minutes and 10 seconds. You see right after that it dips, and then it suddenly goes up.
Well, this was all eyes open, and so I was probably,
Testing.
moving or talking or something. This is where the meditation started, right here. And then even after it started, I kind of fiddled around a little bit. That's why I put that marker here. Right? So you guys were still getting hooked up. So I hooked up first and just let mine run. So this is just junk in here. This is where we started, from here to here. Does that make sense? Yeah? Deborah, that makes sense?
Yes, that makes sense. Yes.
Okay. All right. So if we do a mind mirror summary here, well, so first thing to say is that we're starting at 1501. And so if we just drag the scroll bar over to 1501, I'll just show you that my session is really not trustworthy because of the talking, because there's eye blinks and then there's SEMG. Plus I had the wires right down the front of my face. Even a breath of air could have disturbed them, right? So a lot of change from pattern to pattern, just a lot of changes. And you won't see these changes, these kinds of changes in yours. I wish I had thought to write down the timing of a section when I wasn't talking. Okay, this looks like one, because there's less beta. You see that? Less gamma, less beta. Clearly my eyes were open because it's the higher amplitude alpha. But somehow I managed to be quieter then. And in fact, I do see that let me put this on auto attenuate. Oh, now you see how the gamma, the delta is so dominant in the pattern? Look at all that delta and theta compared to the alpha. That's a massive difference. So that's one thing we know for sure, is that the delta is greater on the frontals, and so is the theta for that matter, than the alpha.
Well, the Gibbses talked about this back in, the 40s and 50s. I mean, there's a whole book on clinical EEG that talks about, various generators, and the generator for delta is frontal.
Really? Yeah, I heard that somewhere.
Oh, yeah. I mentioned it to you whenever I got involved, I mentioned that to you.
Yeah.
It definitely has been known for a long time.
And I've heard that again just recently too, in a conversation with a biophysicist about this. But so there's a lot of variation, and we can't trust this pattern as a template as a result. But when you're quiet and don't have the eye blinks or the frontal tension that would have been caused by my talking and looking up and down the page as I was reading the script, then the way for you to do it is to set a marker, set an ending marker, unless you start at the very beginning, which would be the ideal thing. But if you start a little ways after the recording has been running, then you can set these markers and go to mind mirror segment statistics. And then put in channels 2 and 6. This ran like 39 minutes or something. The actual Anna Wise meditation is only about 24, 25 minutes. So it won't take this long for the data to process inside the mind mirror summary for you as it's doing just now. All right, and so if I look at this pattern, it's really still not unlike the ones I saw to start with, showed you to start with. It's even with the brainwave changes you saw, although oh, wait a second. Do I have, let me check something real quick here. Do I have the frequency adjustment? Nope, it's even. This is where I made the frequency adjustment to the patterns that I showed you at the beginning, and Deborah, I'll show them quickly to you before we conclude, where you can say, all right, alpha, let's leave alpha as the basis, the foundation of the pattern, but let's say that we're going to have more theta. So we can say, all right, 1 or 2 more thetas. I actually have the formula somewhere. We can say, okay, we're probably going to have a little bit more gamma. We might even have a little bit more beta. So what's that pattern going to look like? Well, so that's how I did it before. But right now, the thing is even. So
why didn't you change the delta also? Because you're going to have more delta frontally.
I did, yeah, I did.
Okay.
I certainly did. And so these are the legitimate mind mirror patterns. Because if you're doing the frequency modifier that I did before, it gave me the pattern rewards for the frequency modified pattern. But no, this is I've put it on reset, so this is actually our regular ratios. So it's given me a very low 30%. And the patterns that I showed you before range from 80 to 89 or something like that on the frontal. So this is very low because I'm talking, right? But nevertheless, this is going to be something that we would really want to see. You can send me your sessions and I'll run it, but if you want to run this for yourself, this is how I'm going to do it. And then the other thing I'd be really looking at the hardest is this mind mirror summary plot that comes out of the mind mirror summary function. And I'd be looking at awakened mind. And so on training level 4, it surprises me, but there was actually 5% rewards for training level 4. I would want to take a segment that has got the most dots representing the most rewards. So where would that be? I'd want to look at 5 or 4 because 6, the pattern's just it's not good enough. So I'd probably look at this area right here and click on that, left click on that. That's 1155. And then I'd come to the end of that and say 1242. So this is the mind mirror summary. 1155, I'm writing this down to 1242, and that's for training level 5. And if I wanted to look at a training level 4, it would be for even less time because those are much harder rewards to get. So left click at 2140, and then the left click here again is 2232. So that's about all I'm going to get out of that. So I'll close it down and say, now you have to close this guy down to get anything else, right? So if I say for training level 5, 1155, just to scroll around and find where that is. 11, that's close enough, 58. So I'll put that marker, add this event marker to 1242, just one little old minute. Of course, when you're in meditation and holding the state, you're going to do much better than this. It'll be much easier to get the rewards. So now, all right, so this is training level 5, and I'm going to go for a segment statistics inside of just that 1 minute. All right, here's a G. That's got a little bit more beta than I usually show. That's terrible rewards. All right, so I'm not trusting the timer then, which I haven't been trusting the timer lately because it looks like it's not exactly right. It looks, have you noticed that, Deborah?
Yeah, I worry about the timer and what kind of a lag time when you hit the marker before it actually marks.
Yeah. Well, there has been a problem with the timer once before that we got corrected, but it looks like I've got an old version of the software way up here at something like 4, I don't even know how, here we go, 4.11.4, and so I think I'm on the very old, is it 4.12.5, so the timer's probably all right for you guys, but I'll certainly check it. So I don't really know how to find, if the timer's off, I don't know how to find really good sections like we're trying to do here. On training level 4, it said 2140. Let's just try it again.
Quick question as you're going through this.
Uh-huh.
How do we mark it? Where's our marker?
It's, so you left click inside the window and then you right click.
Okay,
And
so you got to remember to do that. Between the left and the right click, there is a lag too.
what do you mean a lag between the left and the right click?
Well, it's not instantaneously.
No, you're right. You're right. But it'll be within a second or two. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, but chances are you guys don't have this this version of the software that has the lag in it. 2140. That's not it. 21. Right here.
May I ask a question? A lot of times on boxes like this, and I noticed this was not built into the Vilistus, but the marker is actually right on in the box. You just hit a marker, and that's a lot easier than trying to think about it while you're meditating.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a manual trigger button, you know, and that's really nice. And some people are using that trigger button fabulously. But failing that, you can set a marker with the return key, the enter key. Now this makes a little bit more sense. All right, as far as the pattern we've been seeing before. That other pattern had way too much beta in it. And that's 26%, so that's closer to the overall 30. But really, you would want to see something more like the 80 and 90% thing. And the way to find that is in the mind mirror summary plot, to find where the buttons are the most dense and closest together, and get that timer, and then that's your best awakened mind pattern, and that's the segment that we want. Or you can just send the thing to me and I'll show you. Let me show you then, Deborah, because you didn't see this. So that pattern is actually not that different. Where is it? From, let me get rid of this guy. And this guy. All right, so that guy is not that different from this guy here, which is more what we've been seeing, and not just with me, but with any number of people. I don't know how to do this. I guess you can see what I'm showing here. Both, can you see the Vilistus screen and the doc file that I've got up here now? Yeah. All right, so I see nods. Okay, so there's mine and there's mine again. That's a very, very similar pattern. And then John's, John Coates's pattern is here. That's a really similar pattern. Alston Balcom, that's a similar pattern too. Not quite as much alpha, well, actually a little bit more beta than you normally see with Alston. If he had less beta, that would be pretty close. Donna Bach, very similar pattern. You see that? Very similar. Yes.
Can we come in? We recorded Eugenie's session on a different laptop.
Did you?
But
Do you have it? You want to show it?
I'll try to if we can. Oh, if we can get it. It's more or less like.
You know what? That looks very close to the pattern we just saw.
Yep.
And so, you know, it might look just like, it's not much in the way of brainwaves, but look how her 9 hertz alpha ratio is so close to her theta, her top band of theta. So all we have to do, you see, is get the right ratio. If we got the right ratio, so at the time you did that session, did you feel like your thinking mind was going, or what was going on in your awareness at the time?
It was very quiet in my mind. I was aware of my environment, like I am always. So it was not very different from the other sessions before.
No. But this is the summary of the entire meditation part. So not just a selection with the best results. This is from about, I think, 40 minutes onward till the end of the session. It's a summary.
Well, I wonder then if you can do a segmented summary that brings up the summary plot like we just did, and let's see if we can look for the time when you sustained that pattern.
Let's have a look.
The most. And you know, Deborah Deborah Flack, and I guess you were the only other one who was doing this, who was hooked up and doing it. So maybe you could start running your session, pull up the file, and see where your marker is, and do a mind mirror segment summary for the marker to the end of the session. And John, yours too, right? Even though it's a half, you know, it's going to count because you get an awakened mind reward for one hemisphere.
Can you tell me how to do a segment summary?
Sure. So why don't you share your screens, because I think their screen's not shared right now. I forget about this all the time, but we don't want you to have to suffer it. So what I did was I went to View and Mind Mirror Summary, and that gave me a summary plot for the entire session. You see now how it's 39 minutes, more than 39 minutes. Only then can you check the dots and have, you know, and so that's 36 minutes and 37 seconds to 37 minutes and 16 seconds. Of course, that's set for the evolved mind, and that's not what we want. We want the awakened mind. Well, now we have the right. It wasn't a timer problem. It was that I only had a segment of the Mind Mirror Summary plot up there. So look, here's a really long segment here. So that's 37:16 to 38:28. I bet it's going to be a completely different result. 37:16 to 38:78. 37:16. I have to repeat things to myself. 37:16. Okay, let's put one there. To 37:68. There's no such thing as 37:68. What was it? It must have been 38. Well, let's just go with 38:01. I think this is going to give a saner pattern, a more representative pattern than it was before. But the main thing is, yeah. All right, so this is just like the pattern we saw of you Eugenie. See there? Same pattern. So the main thing is that that you have the mind mirror. If what you're looking at is a segmented mind mirror pattern, the timing's not going to be right. To make this work, and thank goodness this happened because I never would have thought to put it in there, you have to go get view mind mirror summary for the whole session. And then the summary plot, the timer, the time record is right. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you just set it for the awakened mind and isolate whatever period of time that is. All right. Mine seems to be on a default for evolved mind. So you just have to switch over for awakened mind and then isolate where you have the most rewards. And if you've got rewards at 4, training level 4, all the better, because that just means a better pattern. Isolate the timing and then go back to any window, any EEG window, doesn't matter what. It can be alpha amplitude, whatever. And then get, for that period of time where you've set the beginning and the ending markers, right click and get mind mirror segment statistics. And then that's what we want. And if it turns out that you've sustained that pattern on the summary plot several places throughout, all the better. I mean, you can just run one plot after another. And my favorite thing about the software really is that you can say, okay, goody, good one here. You can run another one here, say, goody, I've got a basis for comparison. Line these guys all up right next to each other. Let's say this is segment 1, this is segment 2 for my excellent patterns. And then just see how much they vary. Probably won't vary much. Now I'm talking though, so you are seeing a lot of variation, and you're seeing variation in the voltage. That's 30. If I go down to 17 and compare these two guys together, this is my talking you see up here in beta. So you guys want to continue, Eugenie and John? You want to continue where you were before? You were going to show what you got in her session when she was very quiet.
I picked up a part of the summary where there was a strong awakened mind pattern, and then I made a summary of that section.
Great.
And it looks something like this. Try to get it on the screen again. See if it's.
Yep, that's it, and it's a beauty too. Hi, George. All right, thank you very much for that. So we look like we're running close to a same pattern. So Deborah, do you want to, Deborah Flack, did you manage to get both sides of your both hemispheres working at the same time?
I don't know if, yeah, I don't know if it was actually, because when I looked back, I replayed it, it didn't look like it was, but you know, I'm just not experienced enough to really know, so sorry.
Okay, you want to send it to me later on and we'll see?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, thank you. How about you, John?
Okay, let me just get it up. Does it come up for you?
Yeah. Okay, so that's what so this is the live window we're seeing now, or is it the summary window?
It's a summary window.
Okay, so will you do me a favor and left click on the summary window, then tap the G so we can see the gamma too? I love to see the gamma. John, that looks very similar to the pattern we saw on you before.
It does, doesn't it?
It does. And in fact, if you don't mind, can you make it a more horizontal mind mirror pattern than a square one? And so you just grab the window at the bottom and that's it. And then scooting, up other directions. So it's more, not vertical, more horizontal. So.
Is that okay?
Can you make him more horizontal? Yeah, that's just drag him out in one direction. That's it, that's it. And a little bit more horizontal still. I don't know why, but I can see the pattern better when it's more, you see what I'm talking about? I don't know what that is, but when it's more horizontal, it's easier to see the pattern somehow than if it's too square. All right, so.
Perspective. It's a better perspective given
It
what you're
is.
looking at.
It is, isn't it? So that's a little bit more beta than we've seen in the other patterns, but the alpha to theta looks the same. You see this descending theta, so that it's not a 6 hertz peak in theta. Then that big old delta. Any comments on that?
These look remarkably similar, these patterns. They really look like a footprint.
They do, don't they? Okay, John, you can stop screen sharing if you will. And all right, so this is what I was promised to show you, Deborah. I keep getting the same, my patterns are always the same for this frontal hookup. Years of testing. So what I did was I took the pattern modifier and just shaped it around, you know, fiddled with the adjustments, levers until it encompassed the pattern. And this is for Esther. Helen Hess had asked, well, wait a minute, is it dynamic on the forehead? And it is dynamic. There's a higher state pattern. There's a awakened mind pattern with a change there in theta.
And you know what, Judith, that's exactly what you would expect, because, you know, our frontal cortices right now are very activated. So you would expect, if there was communication along the whole continuum of consciousness, unconscious to the conscious mind, bringing it forward to the frontal cortex, that's what you would expect. I mean, think about it.
So are you saying that you would expect that it would be dynamic and you'd see the same patterns in the front as the back?
Well, not the same pattern. Well, yeah, no, I would say that it's dynamic and it travels across the entire cortex, because you're involving all of the networks of the brain. I mean, it's not like one part of the brain works all by itself. They all interact, and they interact in networks. So you want to see a dynamic pattern. If you see a static pattern, that's not our brain in real time. In real time, it's dynamic.
I agree with you, and I'm so glad to hear you say that. So, because it would be, in quotes, unthinkable if it weren't a dynamic pattern on the frontal. I mean, this is where we're processing. The dynamics of the whole rest of the brain have got to be processed and managed up in the frontals, as I understand it. So I've got a bit more alpha than most of the other patterns we've seen. But I've got a ton of alpha in the back. So I don't think that it's so much that what matters about less alpha or more alpha is the alpha theta ratio, just as in the back. And that looks like the same alpha theta ratio we just saw on you, John, the same one we saw on Virginie and Jan. So I think
what you're bringing out from a chemical standpoint, from a biochemical, neurochemical standpoint, makes perfect sense. The transmitters respond in a ratio, in a balance to one another, and they are constantly shifting according to behavior and state. So what you're showing through the mind mirror is a reflection of that dynamic pattern, and that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yeah, so the only thing that we have to be careful of, and this is, we've been warned about this, I didn't even put it in the email because it's such a big issue, is that a neurofeedback person warned us that we want to make sure that we don't bring from the bottom of the head and the back of the head too much alpha forward, because that causes depression and or anxiety. But we're not asking for people to produce more alpha in the front than they're producing in the back. We're just asking, the whole pattern is actually based on the amount of alpha they're producing. The ratios of the pattern are based on that. So my thinking is that that's not going to be a problem. But how we find out, to go back to how we opened this webinar, is that if you guys will do sessions at home with the link, you know, I'll send you the Dropbox link and the hookup diagram. And if you'll do them at home and send them in, and we keep getting the same pattern, then I'll send you a formula for a pattern modifier, that pattern modifier. And let's all test it. And if we feel the same way that we feel when we know good and well that we're in an awakened mind pattern and doing that inner work in that meditation, that problem-solving meditation, then we've got a frontal pattern. And if we've got a frontal pattern, then train it here. Forget about the hair. Let's train it here. And the new people can come in here, who come in can train it on the frontals as well. Now, John and Eugenie, Joy, other awakened mind practitioners, they're not going to want to switch to the frontals because it's not that hard to hook somebody else up. But if they have a client who they want to do some training at home, then that client could hook themselves up more easily at home. For self-trainers, this is a real big deal. Now, and especially if and when we get the headband to perform as promised. And we're about a week away, 2 weeks at the most, from knowing if that's going to become a reality. And then if it does, the headband and the gold electrodes and the medical saline on the forehead will be so easy that anyone can do it. So that's the big hope, is that we can get the ratios and use them with the headband for self-trainers.
Well, now that headband, and in other words, we'll have to buy another sensor. We cannot.
No, you can use you don't have to use a headband at all unless you want to go from the paste to the medical, to the saline. Just what you did, just what people did just now. They can self-train without the headband. It's so easy. Who cares? 5 disposable electrodes. You rip them off and you're finished. But some people are so I don't have a word for it. Let's just say
well, they're turned
unhappy with the paste.
They're turned off. No, yeah.
They can't stand the paste, and they don't even want paste on their forehead. So for those people, the headband is going to be very sweet and open a whole new market up for us. So, let's pursue both things simultaneously. But I sure appreciate that you were willing to spend this much time today talking about this, and really hope you'll take it home. I'll get that email out to you within the hour. It's clearly an easy hookup. It's clearly an easy answer. And then simultaneously, we still have dual channel sensors. I'm calling it the wrong thing. The dual mind mirror setup, where you're measuring the back and the front simultaneously. That's still going around. I think the solution with the mind mirror summary plot, if you use it like I showed it to you the second time, sorry, and to be able to nail down, to target where those patterns are the best. I don't think we need the dual setup. I think we've got it with the mind mirror summary plot. So let us hope. Anything that makes this work easier, yeah? We want to make it. Got any comments or questions?
Yes, well, I'm pretty surprised to see that the pattern in the front of my head is completely different from the back.
Well, that's because we're measuring on the occipitals, so that's going to have a ton more alpha.
Yeah.
And I'm very surprised to see that all of us have the same pattern in the frontal lobes.
Yeah.
So why is that? Why do we all have the same pattern?
All the similarities. Well, for the awakened mind pattern, we should. I mean, because of the brainwaves resonating throughout the head. They should come to the frontals. I mean, just to think about it in practical terms. Okay, so you have all this communication going on across frequencies through the head, and all we're doing is monitoring them on the back. But the same stuff is going on throughout the whole head. I mean, that unconscious is connected to the subconscious, is connected to the conscious, and they're producing the same brain waves, the same pattern, the same amplitudes, which produce the same patterns. So it should move forward. It should move to the frontals in the same way, or very close to the same way, with the expected differentiation, which is lower alpha, lower amplitude alpha. And I don't know why, but that's just has something to do with how alpha travels. I talked to a neurophysiologist, Paul Gary, about it in the UK. And we've been talking about this whole thing for 2 years. Now, we might see Leonardo Mascaro being concerned about brain networks. That's his big forte, and he's just finishing up a book on it right now. And so we'll get him included in this conversation. But honestly, at this point, although I'm saying this in the bliss of ignorance, it seems to me as if they do resonate throughout the head, and all we're doing is monitoring here. We're not training people to have 10 times more alpha than they start with, then I don't see what there is to worry about.
The alpha generator is the back of the head. It is in the back of the head, and it ripples forward. You know, you can think of wave theory and brain waves, which is, we're measuring the activity of millions and millions of neurons. The fact that it has any meaning on the scalp is a miracle in and of itself. And it suggests that you have waves that are literally propagating. They are traveling. And they're traveling and propagating across the brain, the surface of the cortex, you know, the surface of the scalp, I should say, where we're picking it up. They are propagating across the entire brain from their individual generators and through various networks. So it's more in terms of wave propagation, which is what we're actually looking at.
Yeah,
that's what we're measuring.
Absolutely. It's just that some of that power, as it travels to the front, falls off.
Yes, it's not going to be as strong as at the generator, whereas delta, which has the generator in the front, is going to be most powerful there, and the intensity will fall off as it propagates to the back of the head and to either side.
Makes sense. Does that make sense to you guys?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So if I have a client who does have a normal pattern with splayed beta in the back of the head, will he produce something like this, or will that be different as well because he doesn't have an awakened mind?
You'd have to test him. Well, the only thing we can see right now is that when beta is quiet and calm in the back, it's quiet and calm in the front. I would think that, just logically, if his splayed beta in the front should come to the front, and the back should come to the front, but who knows?
Okay.
Without actually testing it.
Okay, Judith, I've got 2 questions. The first is, you talked about frequency adjustments. You had a formula for that?
I do. For the one I found on mine, but I don't know if it'll be the same for yours. We really have to go back and with your live sessions, I can see. I'll tell you what it is when I find it.
Right.
It's not much different at all, as you can see. It's just not much that different. And what's your other question?
The other question was about the placement of the electrodes. Where does it come from? Because it's quite different from what you do on the back.
Yeah.
So how did you find out about this displacement?
Well, the locations in the back are the ones that Max Cade used, and he used them for a number of very good reasons. One is that low artifact in the back of the head. Although there can be strong artifact by the ears, but typically in meditation, there's not going to be as much. So all that movement that you saw in my brain waves while I was reading the meditation, you wouldn't see that kind of movement on the back of the head. But I think the main reason, which is a very interesting reason, that finally, after I asked this question about the placement about 50 times of 2 different sets of people, somebody finally remembered that Max said that he wanted to monitor the visual cortex because he wanted to see the world as other people saw it.
But now that's very nice. But you're talking about why the placement was on the back. But my question was about on the back. I've got the 2 blues on the right side, and now I've got the blues, one here and one here. So the order of the electrodes is different from what I have on the back.
That's right.
So how did you find out which one?
I beg your pardon. That's for electronic reasons. Steve Clark said to do that because they're so close together that for electronic reasons you have to switch 2 of them.
Okay.
You just have to be opposite and then opposite ones.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, that was fine. That's actually the fault checking protocol.
That's a great question. It was also what I wondered about, why they switched like that. So it is electronic.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else got questions?
Yeah. If you don't mind me commenting from a neurofeedback point of view, I'm wondering if Maxwell Cade chose the back of the head because I think it's probably a lot safer when you're elevating slow waves and doing the meditative work with, is it Deborah you're saying about, the alpha generators are at the back. So my only comment about working frontally, or my wondering, I hear what you're saying in terms of keeping the balance of things. The amplitudes will be less frontally for the slow waves, in theory. For some people, it's not. There's quite a bit of research showing that people with fatigue can have either very high alpha or very low alpha. The other thing is that when I'm working with brain injured clients, I do a lot of breathing training because if they're come upper chest breathers, they'll have quite high delta, and you can get them bringing their delta down a lot just by adjusting their breathing. So there's all of these things that go on in my head thinking, okay, what's the ramifications for coming frontally? But what you're saying is fantastic, Judith, in terms of not changing the balance of things too much.
Yeah.
And so because obviously working with brain injury, you see a lot where the slow waves are out of balance, or they've got a lot of high beta as well that you're trying to bring down, because of all that executive function and attentional work that goes on frontally. So it's quite exciting to see this, that the pattern in your system is still there, but I am trying to think through the ramifications of training frontally versus training on the back.
Yeah, I think we have to be real careful. I mean, it has to work. People have to come back and say, I did this, I adjusted this ratio, I turned on the self-training program. Actually, you wouldn't have to turn it on, but you'd have to set the ratios to be able to get your rewards correct. And people have to say, I didn't feel drowsy. I didn't, have insomnia that night. I didn't feel depressed and then these have to be consistent reports from a number of people. It's really kind of an ambitious project, but incredibly worthwhile if we can pull it off.
It could be incredibly helpful. you know, when I was thinking about it and thinking this could be incredibly helpful in terms of that whole balancing out for a lot of people frontally, even just a touch of the training, you know, not necessarily hitting it full on, but I think, as you say, just being able to test it out, look at the front and the back, see the differences, and if there are major differences, that in itself is going to be an interesting thing, you know, even if the amplitude is much further down. But it could be a really helpful training tool once we get to figure out how to use it well.
Yeah, yeah.
Joy, just to add to that, you know, it's not one size fits all. Some of your patients or clients, you might want to use frontal. Some you might want to train from the back. And also, I think that many biofeedback practitioners also include other sensors for the autonomic nervous system. You mentioned breathing and delta, the relationship. If you're monitoring heart rate variability and galvanic skin response also, you're going to see the relationship and whether it calms an anxious person down and has an overall balancing effect on both brain and body. You know, we keep separating the brain as though it's out there in the stratosphere, and we forget there's a body attached to it. So when you include both those, you see the integration too. Yes?
Yeah, Deborah, I use biofeedback all the time with my
She's actually a biofeedback therapist, but yeah, Deborah, you bring up an excellent point. I mean, if we see an awakened mind pattern and somebody's showing arousal and has a high heart rate, well, then that's not the right pattern because it has to match. That's right.
Yeah,
So, you know, that does actually bring up an excellent point that if we are going to go off and do this and you have a GSR and a BVP meter, all the better if you do your personal transformation session with all of the instruments. And I'll
was
add
what
that.
I was trying to set up, and it was taking too long. I mean, it just wasn't going to work.
Actually, Deborah, sometimes what I found really helpful is I quite often have my iPad with a heart rate variability training on the side while the neurofeedback is on, and just have them side by side.
Yeah, I did the same thing with my inner balance. I use heart math, so I can put them together that way. The only thing, if they're both Bluetooth, you have to watch for, you know, a miscommunication. They'll cancel each other out. They're both sharing a certain bandwidth. And so if you have one that plugs in and is not reliant on Bluetooth and one that's Bluetooth, you'll have good signals for both.
Yeah. Well, listen, I want to thank you all for joining in and for your enhancing comments for the whole project. And I realize this is a long term. It might be another year until you have time to do this test. I hope not. I hope you can do it the next couple of weeks or something, even in the next couple of months, a month if it takes that long. But I think it's a noble effort that would benefit a lot of people if we can get it working. So however long it takes, it will be worthwhile.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Thank you so much for joining in, for being here, and
Thank you.
hope to see you again soon. Bye, everybody, citizens of the world.
Bye.
second mind pattern. We should. I mean, because of the brainwaves resonating throughout the head. They should come to the frontals. I mean, just to think about it in practical terms. Okay, so you have all this communication going on across frequencies through the head, and all we're doing is monitoring them on the back. But the same stuff is going on throughout the whole head. I mean, that unconscious is connected to the subconscious, is connected to the conscious, and they're producing the same brain waves, the same pattern, the same amplitudes, which produce the same patterns. So it should move forward. It should move to the frontals in the same way, or very close to the same way, with the expected differentiation, which is lower alpha, lower amplitude alpha. And I don't know why, but that's just has something to do with how alpha travels. I talked to a neurophysiologist, Paul Gary, about it in the UK. And we've been talking about this whole thing for 2 years. Now, we might see Leonardo Mascaro being concerned about brain networks. That's his big forte, and he's just finishing up a book on it right now. And so we'll get him included in this conversation. But honestly, at this point, although I'm saying this in the bliss of ignorance, it seems to me as if they do resonate throughout the head, and all we're doing is monitoring here. We're not training people to have 10 times more alpha than they start with, then I don't see what there is to worry about.
The alpha generator is the back of the head. It is in the back of the head, and it ripples forward. You know, you can think of wave theory and brain waves, which is, we're measuring the activity of millions and millions of neurons. The fact that it has any meaning on the scalp is a miracle in and of itself. And it suggests that you have waves that are literally propagating. They are traveling. And they're traveling and propagating across the brain, the surface of the cortex, you know, the surface of the scalp, I should say, where we're picking it up. They are propagating across the entire brain from their individual generators and through various networks. So it's more in terms of wave propagation, which is what we're actually looking at.
Yeah,
that's what we're measuring.
Absolutely. It's just that some of that power, as it travels to the front, falls off.
Yes,
it's not going to be as strong as at the generator, whereas delta, which has the generator in the front, is going to be most powerful there, and the intensity will fall off as it propagates to the back of the head and to the either side.
Makes sense. Does that make sense to you guys?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So if I have a client who does have a normal pattern with splayed beta in the back of the head, will he produce something like this, or will that be different as well because he doesn't have an awakened mind?
I don't know. You'd have to test him. Well, the only thing we can see right now is that when beta is quiet and calm in the back, it's quiet and calm in the front. Mm-hmm. I would think that, just logically, if his splayed beta in the front should come to the front, and the back should come to the front, but who knows?
Yeah. Okay.
Without actually testing it.
Okay, Judith, I've got 2 questions. The first is, you talked about frequency adjustments. You had a formula for that?
I do. For the one I found on mine, but I don't know if it'll be the same for yours. We really have to go back and with your live sessions, I can see. It's on a sticky note somewhere. Yeah, I have to find my sticky note. I put it in some safe place. Ha ha ha. I'll tell you what it is when I find it. Right. It's not much different at all, as you can see. There's just not much that different. And what's your other question?
The other question was about the placement of the electrodes. Where does it come from? Because it's quite different from what you do on the back.
Yeah.
So how did you find out about this placement?
Well, the locations in the back are the ones that Max Cade used, and he used them for a number of very good reasons. One is that low artifact in the back of the head. Although there can be strong artifact by the ears, but typically in meditation, there's not going to be as much. So all that movement that you saw in my brain waves while I was reading the meditation, you wouldn't see that kind of movement on the back of the head. But I think the main reason, which is a very interesting reason, that finally, after I asked this question about the placement about 50 times of 2 different sets of people, somebody finally remembered that Max said that he wanted to monitor the visual cortex because he wanted to see the world as other people saw it.
But now that's very nice. But you're talking about why the placement was on the back. But my question was about on the back. I've got the 2 blues on the right side, and now I've got the blues, one here and one here. So the order of the electrodes is different from what I have on the back.
That's right.
So how did you find out which one?
I beg your pardon. That's for electronic reasons. Steve Clark said to do that because they're so close together that for electronic reasons you have to switch 2 of them.
Okay.
You just have to be opposite and then opposite ones.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, that was fine. That's actually the fault checking protocol.
That's a great question. It was also what I wondered about, why they switched like that. So it is electronic.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else got questions?
No, nothing.
All right. Well, I'll send you yes, Joy?
Yeah. If you don't mind me commenting from a neurofeedback point of view, I'm wondering if Maxwell Cade chose the back of the head because I think it's probably a lot safer when you're elevating slow waves and doing the meditative work with, is it Deborah you're saying about, the alpha generators are at the back. So my only comment about working frontally, or my wondering, I hear what you're saying in terms of keeping the balance of things. The amplitudes will be less frontally for the slow waves, in theory. For some people, it's not. There's quite a bit of research showing that people with fatigue can have either very high alpha or very low alpha. The other thing is that when I'm working with brain injured clients, I do a lot of breathing training because if they're come upper chest breathers, they'll have quite high delta, and you can get them bringing their delta down a lot just by adjusting their breathing. So there's all of these things that go on in my head thinking, okay, what's the ramifications for coming frontally? But what you're saying is fantastic, Judith, in terms of not changing the balance of things too much.
Yeah.
And so because because obviously working with brain injury, you see a lot where the slow waves are out of balance, or they've got a lot of high beta as well that you're trying to bring down, because of all that executive function and attentional work that goes on frontally. So it's quite exciting to see this, that the pattern in your system is still there, but I am trying to think through the ramifications of training frontally versus training on the back.
Yeah, I think we have to be real careful. I mean, it has to work. People have to come back and say, yeah, I did this, I adjusted this ratio, I turned on the self-training program. Actually, you wouldn't have to turn it on, but you'd have to set the ratios to be able to get your rewards correct. And people have to say, yeah, I didn't feel drowsy. I didn't, have insomnia that night. I didn't feel depressed, and then these have to be consistent reports from a number of people. It's really kind of an ambitious project, but incredibly worthwhile if we can pull it off.
It could be incredibly helpful. You know, when I was thinking about it and thinking this could be incredibly helpful in terms of that whole balancing out for a lot of people frontally, even just a touch of the training, you know, not necessarily hitting it full on, but I think, as you say, just being able to test it out, look at the front and the back, see the differences, and if there are major differences, that in itself is going to be an interesting thing, you know, even if the amplitude is much down. But it could be a really helpful training tool once we get to figure out how to use it well.
Yeah.
Joy, just to add to that, you know, it's not one size fits all. Some of your patients or clients, you might want to use frontal. Some you might want to train from the back. And also, I think that many biofeedback practitioners also include other sensors for the autonomic nervous system. You mentioned breathing and delta, the relationship. If you're monitoring heart rate variability and galvanic skin response also, you're going to see the relationship and whether it calms an anxious person down and has an overall balancing effect on both brain and body. You know, we keep separating the brain as though it's out there in the stratosphere, and we forget there's a body attached to it. So when you include both those, you see the integration too. Yes?
Yeah, Deborah, I use biofeedback all the time with my
She's actually a biofeedback therapist, but yeah, Deborah, you bring up an excellent point. I mean, if we see an awakened mind pattern and somebody's showing arousal and has a high heart rate, well, then that's not the right pattern because it has to match. That's right.
Yeah,
so, you know, that does actually bring up an excellent point, that if we are going to go off and do this and you have a GSR and a BVP meter, all the better if you do your personal transformation session with all of the instruments. And
that was what I was trying to set up, and it was taking too long. I mean, it just wasn't going to work.
Actually, Deborah, sometimes what I found really helpful is I quite often have my iPad with a heart rate variability training on the side while the neurofeedback is on, and just have them side by side.
Yeah, I did the same thing with my inner balance. I use heart math, so I can put them together that way. The only thing, if they're both Bluetooth, you have to watch for, you know, a miscommunication. They'll cancel each other out. They're both sharing a certain bandwidth. And so if you have one that plugs in and is not reliant on Bluetooth and one that's Bluetooth, you'll have good signals for both.
Yeah. Well, listen, I want to thank you all for joining in and for your enhancing comments for the whole project. And I realize this is a long term. It might be another year until you have time to do this test. I hope not. I hope you can do it the next couple of weeks or something, even in the next couple of months, a month if it takes that long. But I think it's a noble effort that would benefit a lot of people if we can get it working. So however long it takes, it will be worthwhile.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Thank you so much for joining in, for being here, and
Thank you.
hope to see you again soon.